The last portable monitor that I looked at also came from Uperfect. My question today is this OLED screen that Uperfect has worth the money? If you're in the market for a portable monitor, is it actually worth going for this OLED in general? The last Uperfect screen that I had a chance to take a look at, I was pretty impressed by. So today I think we should just open this up, take a closer look at it, and see if it's worth it. We'll take a closer look at the panel itself, and of course the build quality, and how it works with all the different devices that I have. So without further ado, let's just hop right in and take a closer look. This screen here was sent to me by Uperfect. As with all my reviews, the company has no input in what I say. They're not seeing this review beforehand, and of course, all opinions are my own. I'm just going to give you guys my honest thoughts to what I think about this. Before I open this up, I do think we should hop over to their website to take a look to see what kind of specs this has. This is very different from the last screen that I looked at, not just because it's OLED, but it has a couple other features with it. The screen that we're looking at today is the UColor O2. This is a 16-inch portable monitor with a 3K resolution, and it supports 120 Hz. If you want to get that full 120 Hz, you do have to go through the Type-C port. If you use the HDMI, you're going to be capped to 100 Hz. I like Uperfect because they have a lot of different bundles, and their screens are pretty good. They also have free worldwide delivery, and it ships with DHL. This is advertised as having a 2880 by 1800 resolution. One thing that I like is a really bright screen, so I'm kind of interested to see how bright this is. This should match other panels like the ROG Ally X or the Steam Deck OLED. 500 nits should be pretty decent. Because this is also OLED, it doesn't have to have a backlight, so this should be a really thin screen too. At the thickest point, this is only 0.26 inches, and at the thinnest point, we're looking at 0.14 inches. This does also support HDR, and because it's OLED, you're going to have a really fast pixel response of only 1 millisecond. This display also has speakers. I wasn't too impressed with the speakers on the last portable screen that I had from these guys, so I'm not really having any high expectations for the ones on this screen. Either way though, this seems to have a lot of compatibility. It looks like it has a pretty good panel, and I'm kind of interested to see how exactly this is going to fare. There are two models here for their OLED panels. We have the original one and then the O2. The original one is only 15.6 inches with 60 Hz. This is the O2 model, so this is the one with the 120 Hz panel as I mentioned. This is also a glossy display, which should be a lot better for OLED in general, and it should let us get some better brightness. This doesn't have a built-in battery bank though, so you will have to supply it with power. One of the other big downsides of this screen in particular is it does not support FreeSync. This is not a huge negative, but it would have been nice to have, especially on OLED. Variable refresh rate and OLED don't really go hand in hand, and when you try to get variable refresh rate on an OLED panel, you get a lot of flickering. So in general, I think they went for a really good balance here of panel quality and panel features, but how does this exactly stack up? If you're interested in picking this up, it is $349.99, but I'll leave a coupon down below and on the screen here if you're interested in picking it up. You can save a little bit of money that way. So now that we've looked a little bit at what it is, let's open up the UColor O2 and see how it fares. This is just their plain box. There's no real marking on it, but let's see what comes inside. In the box, we obviously have the screen, and one thing I'm surprised by is just how thin this thing is. It feels extremely light, but this thing is just remarkably thin. This comes with a little manual showing you how to use the USB-C and the HDMI modes, and it tells you everything that you get with it, so double check just to make sure everything's in the package. On the back, it shows us the specifications of the display, so let's set this aside for now. In the box, we also get our HDMI cable, as well as two USB-C cables for video out, and I'll try these to make sure that they work. Looks like you also get the screws for the VESA mount, but the VESA mount isn't included, so you'll have to buy that separately. The last thing in the box is just a simple USB-C charger. This is a 30-watt USB-C charger. It has USB-C on one side, and you can use one of those cables that they sent with it for this charger. However, that's all there is in the box, so let's set this aside and take a look at the actual screen. The screen comes wrapped pretty nice. One thing I can't get over is just how thin this screen is. It's a little thicker at the bottom where the I/O is, but up at the top it's much thinner. On the one side, we have all the controls for the menus and the inputs. On the other side, we have two USB-C cables and our HDMI. This stand is also pretty versatile. There's a couple different mounts you can do. There's one here with a little notch at the bottom where it can sit. It is nice to see that this display comes with a stand though, and this is pretty easy to get off. It's just magnetized. Let's take this off and take a peek at the actual screen itself. On the back, you get a close look at those buttons. You have the power button on the top, then you have your menu button. You can also see that the back is made out of metal, so it does pick up a lot of humidity. There is a plus button and a minus button, as well as the reset button at the bottom. On the other side, you can control the different inputs, so you got the HDMI and the two USB-Cs. In the back, you also have the VESA mount. The screen comes with a nice protective cover to protect it during shipping. The display itself has a really glossy coating. This is something that you would see on a lot of laptop displays. Now, because this doesn't have a built-in battery bank, you won't be able to turn it on without plugging it in. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and we'll try it with a couple different devices just to see how this display looks. It looks like when you plug this in, you're going to have to put that USB-C into the top port facing the top of the screen. Then if you want to turn it on, hold down the power button on the top left. Let's hook it up to my favorite Android device at the moment, the Odin 2 Portal. Now, as soon as I plugged it in, I did notice that my device is charging, so this does support pass-through charging. I don't know how quick it is, but it is nice to see that that's available. Let's go ahead and turn on the display by holding the power button down, and it immediately pops up. One thing I'm noticing is just how quick this is compared to what I'm actually seeing on my display. Because this is OLED, you're getting a really quick pixel response, so as soon as I press that button, it does seem to move over relatively quickly. Now, in regards to the menu itself, let's see what the menu looks like on the screen. I'm going to press the second button here. Right off the bat, this is in full brightness mode with 50% contrast. However, it's in standard mode. Let's see if we can get that menu up again and control some of this. Now, I'm not exactly sure how to use this menu here. Well, it's pretty easy to control. You got a movie mode, which seems to brighten it up. Text mode darkens it down. FPS mode is pretty nice to have, RTS, and standard. So I would use this probably in game mode or just standard mode. However, movie mode looks really good too. I think I should turn off these lights here so you can just see how vibrant this is. So shutting off that light lets you see the display a little bit better, and you can just see how bright and vibrant this panel is. Even with that on full brightness, you could see that with my lights on. So this is a very bright and vibrant display. Colors also look really sharp too. Let's try loading up a game just to see how well it works. Alright, well that was surprising. I didn't expect the speakers to sound that good. Yeah, this is pretty impressive for a display. I'm actually kind of blown away by this quality here. One thing that I really like so far is the pixel response and the color, as well as that sound. The speakers are really good. I think this is actually a lot better than what I was expecting it to be. Well, this works, so let's swap over to something a little different. It's nice to know that Android devices that support HDMI over USB-C should work pretty good. Let's try a Windows device, so I'm going to grab my Legion Go and we'll give that a try. I've got it hooked up to my Legion Go. Everything seems to be working great, and the color is just absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, with this being an OLED panel, you should get some really good contrast. I currently have it set to movie mode. HDR mode is off, however it is in low power mode, so I'm wondering what would happen if I shut that off. I think that might have brightened the display a little bit, but I don't really notice it too much. I also just shut it off. Hold on a second. DCR is going to adjust the contrast ratio on the fly, so I want to leave that off. It doesn't seem to change much, but it did also change it back to standard mode. FPS mode does seem to brighten it up a little bit. Text mode makes it a little darker. I personally really like this movie mode. Game mode is a little dark too, so I'd stick to either standard or that movie mode. The only other things we have on the menu is black level adjustment. You can also adjust the hue and the saturation. By default, it is going to be set to this color mode here, but you can adjust things like the blue light, or you can adjust the colors too. You also have the on-screen display menu. You can also turn on the HDR mode here too. Let's try the HDR mode just to see what it looks like. So I have it set to only go to the display 2. Display 2 shows here correctly. I have to use the touchpad though on the Legion Go, so it's not as intuitive as using a full controller. So that HDR mode is still showing as off. For some reason I can't enable it, so auto might not work. I also might have to disable this because the Legion Go is currently running on battery, so I'm going to shut that off. No, so I can't use HDR with that set to auto. I'm going to go back to that menu, turn it back on. Oh, okay, so there's a couple different kind of HDR modes. You can go off, auto, or 2084. So the color did change a little bit. Everything seemed to get a lot darker on the screen. All the outlines on this menu kind of went away. So let's try that HDR mode. I'm going to turn that on in Windows. Oh, that's interesting. So even though it's enabled on the screen, it doesn't actually show properly on Windows. Okay, so you just had to go back to that menu to enable it. So let's turn it on in Windows now. Let's turn on HDR video streaming and auto HDR. And you can also control the brightness here. I like a bright panel, so let's just drag this all the way to full. I'm also curious to see how bright this panel is, so let's do a quick calibration just to see how bright it gets. I'll just leave this at the darkest setting. For the brightest setting though, you want to turn this up until it disappears. It's still visible. 1200, 1400. So it seems to disappear around this 1600 mark. Between 1500 and 1600. I'm just going to set it to about this 1600 mark. Then we want to set this till that disappears. There's the 1000 mark. 1200 is still a little bit visible. So it seems to be around the 1300 mark, which is really good for a portable screen. And then you can adjust the saturation. I'm just going to bump this up. Let's set that to max. Yeah, so HDR actually works really good on this display. Huh. Colors look so vibrant too. So one thing that's interesting is that this is actually not charging the Legion Go. Next thing I like to do is to test the screen for any panel issues. Let's go ahead and check for any defective pixels. I'm also going to check for uniformity. So the test pattern looks really good. Everything's sharp and the colors are also showing correctly. I'm not noticing any bright pixels on black. I had a peak on red and I'm not noticing any dead pixels either, so this seems to be a really good panel with quality control. Green also looks really good. I'm not noticing any dead pixels. There's no uniformity or light bleed from the edges either. Blue also looks really good, and I don't see any dead pixels either. Something that's really nice about OLED panels is you get perfect uniformity, so you're not going to get things like light bleeding that you'd see on IPS displays. Now you might see some strobing on this, but that's just the way the camera's picking it up. You're not seeing that in person. Another nice thing about OLED panels is you generally get good uniformity. I'm not seeing any dirty screen effect on this panel. 25% brightness on gray looks good. 50% looks good as well. And 75% looks good too. Absolutely no issues on this display. Solid thumbs up from me. Colors also look really good gradient wise. There's no banding on the display. Everything looks really sharp. One thing that's really nice about OLED as mentioned is the quick response times. These just seem to be perfectly flowing across the display. There's no ghosting whatsoever. So yeah, all in all, very solid panel. I'm really impressed so far. So let's check out the black levels on this panel. I'm going to go ahead and shut these lights off so you can see just how dark this screen gets. This is with all the lights shut off. I still have a light turned on in the room, but you can see that this is not being illuminated in the back. This is perfect black levels. This is an absolutely beautiful display. I would go as far as to say that this is probably the nicest portable display that I've ever seen. And even compared to the handhelds that I have, the only thing that can come close to this is probably the Odin 2 Portal. This is an absolutely fantastic panel. Personally, I just can't get over how vibrant the colors look on this display. Wow, this is such a nice screen. Well, we know how good this display is now, so let's try it on a couple games and see how well it looks for those. Now I'm going to keep this on HDR mode first with the auto HDR function enabled just to see what the games look like with that on. Then I'll go back, disable that, and we'll just see what it looks like with its native panel colors. I gotta say, once you go OLED, it's so hard to go back. It just looks so nice compared to IPS screens. So even though this is running on the Legion Go, it actually feels really smooth. So I currently have this set to 16 watts and I'm getting 100 FPS. It looks like this is set to 1920 by 1200. Not really sure why it's not letting me change it. This game is a little wonky with resolution, but it does seem to look fine. Honestly, I have really no complaints with this screen so far. I almost think it's worth spending a little bit more just to get an OLED panel for something like this, just because you're going to have a much better experience overall. Especially if you're playing games on it, you want quick, you want responsive. It's really hard to beat OLED. Okay, so let's try turning off that auto HDR function. I'm just going to try on the menu first just to see if it disables it in Windows. Okay, so that's off. Now it is going to look a little wonky because I do have that HDR color saturation already applied in Windows. I'm going to have to go back to Windows, disable that, then it should be okay. Let's go ahead and exit out, and I'm going to disable that. HDR is now disabled, so let's go back to the game. The colors do look a little bit more punchy with HDR off. However, I do think it might have been a tad brighter with the HDR on. Personally, I think if you're going to play games with this, I'd probably leave the HDR off. If you want to watch movies though, HDR does look really good. But I've since upgraded my display on my monitor and my TV to OLED, so it's really hard to go back. Now having a portable display with OLED, it's just so nice. I know this display is not powered, so I'm curious to see if this can run directly off the Legion Go. So I'm going to unplug the power, we'll just see if it shuts off. Yeah, so that shut off, and obviously wasn't very happy about it. Don't unplug the power when it's on. Let's plug that power back in to make sure that it works still, or if I just broke it. Yeah, so just don't unplug the power when it's on. You should be a-okay, but it does look really nice and is a really good display. Gaming on here is definitely one of the best highlights of it. Now just to take a quick look at those display settings as well. Again, this is not a touchscreen display, so you're going to have to do everything with the device itself. This is also using 10-bit color, which is really good, and it's full RGB. As far as the display goes on the AMD software, it does show as not supporting FreeSync, which is correct. Integer scaling is off by default, but you can turn that on, and it can also go up to 10-bit color. And as mentioned, that is also full RGB output. This is not limited color either, so this is a very accurate, really good display. And that display is running actively at 2880 by 1800. With the USB-C link port speed at 5.4 gigabytes per second with 4 channels, so this is working really good. All in all, I just think this is a fantastic little screen. It's a good size, it's extremely light, and it looks really nice. Speaking of the weight, let me show you how light this thing is. The screen is a little heavier at 712.5 grams, but it feels really light because the weight is spread out so much. For some perspective, this is really close in weight to the Legion Go, and just a little heavier than your average power bank. If you do connect this to a Steam Deck, you probably want to disable the HDR. I find this looks just much better overall with this. Yeah, so I guess in conclusion, this is definitely an incredible panel. Honestly, I just love how bright this gets. The colors look so vibrant and oversaturated. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. As mentioned, I also really enjoy the quick pixel response. This feels instantaneous from when I'm pressing it on the gaming device. Now, if you're in the market for a good screen, yes, this one definitely gets my seal of approval. It feels really high quality, the screen is awesome, and the price isn't too bad either. But do you have this one, or have you bought a screen from Uperfect before? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any questions, make sure to ask in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone.